Hello and welcome to Gettable, AFL.com.au's home of trade, draft, free agency and contract news. We are brought to you, as always, by Google Pixel. Great to have Google Pixel on board in season 2024 and for their continued support of the show. I'm Riley Beveridge. I'm all by myself today, but we've got plenty still to come. We'll get to your questions in Askable in just a little bit. We've also got John Meeson from Capital Sports Group coming on the show a bit later to chat through some of his clients. He's got plenty of guys in the trade and draft space this year that are really interesting. But before that, let's get to Askable. Your questions, here we go, presented by Google Pixel. As always, if you want to get in touch with us, get to our Instagram page at Gettable and ask your questions. We'll start with Braids, and Braids wants to know, Dan Houston, Nick Haynes and Christian Petracca to the Blues, and is the Harry McKay stuff real? Well, let's go through all of them. We'll start with Dan Houston. I think there's a bit to eventuate here with Dan Houston and Carlton. I wouldn't rule Carlton out of the race for Dan Houston completely at the moment, but at the moment, I don't think there's any chance Carlton wants to put its first round pick in this year's draft on the table. That's what Port Adelaide wants as a starting point. We've said all along, and our reports on Gettable all along have been that Port Adelaide will ask for 2 first-round picks for Dan Houston. I think they want at least one of them to be from this year's draft, given the strength of that. I don't think Carlton will put a first-round pick from this year's draft on the table. So still more to eventuate, I think, on the Dan Houston situation, particularly at the Blues. Nick Haynes, I think they get as an unrestricted free agent. And in terms of the Christian Petracca and the Harry McKay stuff, I've spoken to Dave Trotter, Harry McKay's manager from Hemisphere Sport Management Group, and he said that both Melbourne and Carlton have also spoken to him and have told him it's got nothing to do with them and it's nothing that they've discussed, and that even if it was, Harry is 100% not interested in a trade. He's, of course, contracted until 2030 at the Blues. He signed that massive 7-year deal before last season, so I don't think Harry McKay will be going to Melbourne as part of that. As things stand, Carlton's not involved in the Christian Petracca situation at all at the moment, so it's got nothing to do with them. And not just with the Blues, but I think this was with every club that could potentially facilitate a Christian Petracca trade. I don't get the sense that anyone would be willing to put up a player that's not completely invested and interested in a trade in order to get Christian Petracca over the line. I think that's obviously a situation that clubs don't want to get involved in. So I think there's plenty more still to play out with the Christian Petracca situation, but I can't see players forcing through another player that they've got on their books in order to get a deal done. Darcy wants to know what's going on with Bailey Smith. Well, we've been confident all along that I think he heads to Geelong. Obviously, Hawthorn in that mix as well. The Western Bulldogs have had a 2-year deal on the table throughout the season as well, which would have taken him through to free agency at the Whitten Oval. But yeah, I think Geelong is the destination for him at the moment. It's just going to be interesting in terms of how a trade plays out, given they're a 3rd place finish on the ladder. They have, I think, pick 16 as things stand, whether or not that's enough for the Western Bulldogs to agree to a deal. Daniel wants to know, Isaac coming to Adelaide or Port Adelaide? Well, he's still deciding. He's got a 4-year deal on the table from the Giants. Fremantle and Melbourne were also keen on Isaac coming, but I think they've been made aware now that if he was to leave the Giants, he would go to South Australia and one of those 2 South Australian clubs. So I think it's a 3-horse race for him between Port Adelaide, Adelaide and the Giants. Now, similar situation with Harry Perryman, who's also tossing up a move between Port Adelaide, Hawthorn and the Giants. Neither of those guys have made their decisions yet, and we don't expect them to make their decisions until after their season finishes, given they're unrestricted free agents. But if I was to call it now, I think both are probably leaning towards leaving, but obviously their final destination still to be decided. And just on the Giants as well, we've spoken about James Peatling quite a bit throughout the course of the year. He's now got a 2-year deal on the table from the Giants. Obviously, they've upped their offer from 1 year, as we mentioned, but he's now got multiple 3- and 4-year deals on the table from rival clubs trying to prize him out of the Giants at the end of the season. We've reported already that St Kilda, Melbourne and West Coast have all had interest. I can now say that Collingwood is also among the clubs to have inquired about James Peatling. So the race for James Peatling is heating up massively. He's had such a great end to the season. He's going to be a huge part in their finals campaign. So a lot of clubs now interested in James Peatling. Luke wants to know, how do West Coast generate more draft picks? Well, we know Tom Barrass is heading to Hawthorn. He requested a trade at their exit interview yesterday on Tuesday. They're also interested in Liam Baker and Jack Graham. As we know, they've got a 4-year deal on the table for Jack Graham. I wouldn't completely rule them out of the Denver Grainger Barrass situation. Still uncontracted at Hawthorn, but he is a West Australian, particularly if Tom Barrass leaves now, and whether or not he could be involved in that. Obviously a key defender. I think a lot of the guys in terms of Liam Baker and Jack Graham now are just waiting on the coach situation. So they want to know exactly who's going to coach West Coast going forward before they commit their future to the football club. Alex wants to know who are the favourites to land Alex Neil-Bullen. I think that's Adelaide now. Port Adelaide's just so busy with Harry Perryman, Isaac Cumming, Joe Richards and Riley Garcia, plus still some stuff obviously to play out there with Dan Houston. Cameron wants to know, has anyone emerged as a likely pick 1 for the Tigers? Well, it was a massive weekend, particularly in the Coates Talent League over the weekend. I want to speak about Jagger Smith because he had 33 disposals and 2 goals for the Oakleigh Chargers over the weekend, including this unbelievable running goal that he kicked. He was fantastic in their big win over the Western Jets. There was quite a few Oakleigh Chargers players that improved their stocks. Finn O'Sullivan as well kicked 3 goals. He's proved a goal kicker over the last little bit as well. He kicked some goals for Richmond's VFL side, obviously, as we know. Harvey Langford was another massive performer on the weekend for the Dandenong Stingrays. 33 disposals and 4 goals. His ability right throughout the season's been to go forward and hit the scoreboard as well, and to kick 4 goals in that game for the Dandenong Stingrays was a massive effort from him, and you can see some of the goals he kicks here. He was fantastic in that display. Sam Lawler, another one, 25 disposals and 1 goal for the Rebels. He was fantastic. And Josh Smiley, 29 disposals and a goal for the Eastern Rangers. So it was great to see him find some form. Some guys that probably won't be in the pick 1 discussion, but still had massive weekends. Job Shanahan, 6 goals for the Bendigo Pioneers, and Jesse Detoli, who's really firming into that top 20-25 mix now, 26 disposals and 3 goals for the Northern Knights. Some disappointing news though. Xavier Lindsay, who's probably a top 15 to 20 pick, injured his PCL for the Gippsland Power over the weekend. He'll now miss the rest of the season. Might not go back for the Combine as well, but speaking to clubs yesterday, they still think he's firmly in that top 15 to 20 mix, and this won't impact his draft stocks at all. Alison wants to know, anyone else on the way out of Melbourne? This is an interesting one. I mean, everyone's been questioning Melbourne's culture recently, but I think you can look at it in 2 different ways. You can see the Christian Petracca situation and find that fascinating, and it is fascinating, but you can also look at it in the sense that Max Gawn, their captain, their premiership captain, signed on till 2027 recently. Jack Viney, the heart and soul of Melbourne, signed till 2028. Harry Petty signed until 2027, when it would have been a lot easier for him to get back to South Australia this year than it was last year when he did have some interest. He's then re-signed at the club in the last couple of weeks. Ed Langdon signed until 2028. Jacob Van Rooyen, who's going to be a star of the future, has signed on till 2029. Caleb Windsor and Colton Thelstrup have signed on till 2028. All of these re-signings have happened while the season's been going and while their culture has been questioned. So there is a second way that you can look at Melbourne's situation, and that maybe it's not so bad from a mass exodus point of view. I don't think it's going to be a mass exodus. There's one player who's disappointed and wants to get out of that football club, which is fair enough, but I don't think it's a full club thing at the moment. And just finally, our Google Pixel question. On the Google Pixel, the Magic Editor feature lets you edit your photos right on your phone. And today we want to know, if you could magically edit an uncontracted player into this year's All-Australian squad, who has had the best season? Well, it's interesting. Scott Pendlebury, I think, will be right up there. I mean, he's uncontracted at the moment. He's got a deal on the table for 2025. I expect him to sign that. Still hasn't signed it just yet, though. He'd be right up there, I reckon. Jake Stringer's kicked 42 goals. He'd have to be in the mix. Liam Baker or Josh Battle, maybe. But it just goes to show how strong this year's All-Australian squad is and how many of them have already re-signed and had their futures secured throughout the season. Plenty more still to come on Gettable. John Meeson's got plenty of clients on his plate going into this year's trade and draft period. Let's bring him in. All right, welcome back to Gettable, brought to you by Google Pixel. We are wrapped to be joined today by John Meeson from Capital Sports Group. John, thanks for coming back on Gettable.
Thanks, Riley. Thanks for having me.
It's always good to have you in. I might start with just a quick one. In your chats with clubs at the moment, how much movement are you expecting this year? Because for a while throughout the season, it seemed like it was going to be a quiet trade period. Now there's a fair bit going on.
Yeah, I think there's, during the start, I thought it might have been a little bit of a quieter one. We've just got to stay flexible. There's some moving parts and whatnot, so I think it's going to be pretty active.
We'll see how it goes. Normally we're so forward thinking on this show, but I want to start with a bit different one today and go back 12 months, because I reckon you were here 12 months ago and we spoke about Jack Ginnivan's future at the time. He was at Collingwood, he was about to become a premiership player. He's now moved to Hawthorn, and the season he's had has been remarkable. This is what we saw from Jack in his first couple of years at the Pies when he was playing with so much freedom. How much is he enjoying his time at the Hawks?
Oh, he's absolutely loving it. Football aside, he's just in a really good place off field, loving the support he's got at the footy club. I think they're a pretty like-minded bunch of guys, and the way they're playing at the moment is pretty exciting. So he's absolutely loving it.
He fits with their culture as well. They seem like they're young and they're having a lot of fun, don't they?
Yeah, I think it just suits him. When the trade was done and the move was made, going from a premiership side to a team that were on the rebuild was a bit questionable by some people, but we were really confident that it was a really good fit for him, and Sam Mitchell would be a strong coach for him. So, paying benefits at the moment. How
late did that opportunity come up? Because obviously the Lockie Schultz thing took a lot of people by surprise at the time, him moving across from Fremantle to Collingwood, but he just won a flag, Jack, at Collingwood. He was contracted at the club. How late did the opportunity come up for him?
It was pretty late, but like I said before, like you've just got to stay flexible. Like there were some murmurs that some things might be happening, and I think once the Schultz stuff became official, like Jack had a pretty tough year that year, through a few different things, but we just saw the opportunity there to get a fresh start and move somewhere else, and he really enjoyed his time at Collingwood. Like he's a premiership player, and he can't thank them enough, but you've got to go where the work is and stay ahead of the curve, and our job was to try and facilitate that, and we were happy with it.
Staying at Collingwood for the moment, you've got Joe Richards there at the moment, who's had a breakthrough year. He's played a handful of games, shown a lot of promise in that small forward role. Coming towards the end of his deal at the Pies now, he's been offered a new deal, but he's got some interest around the competition. What's he weighing up at the moment? Yeah,
so they've got their Wacky Wednesday today, so I won't be speaking to him today, but I'll catch up with him in the next couple of days. He's got an offer to stay at Collingwood. But he's clearly got some interest elsewhere. I think he's a little bit of a different one. He's 25 years old. He's worked really hard to get to this point. So the next move for him has got to be a really smart move, and we just want to take things into consideration. He's a really level-headed guy, so we'll sit down at the right time.
How have you seen his season? Because he was such a fantastic story in his draft year. He came from nowhere, in a sense. He was a school teacher, then got drafted. How have you seen his season, what he's been able to produce at the Pies, breaking through for his first couple of AFL
I'm just really happy that he got some opportunity. I saw his talent, it just stood out, and I thought he was always going to be one that would be better at the higher level. So he started the season really well in the VFL and just forced his way in, and then he snuck some games in, finished the season in the side. He's only played 8 or 9 games, I think it is, but I think he's shown that at his best he's an AFL player.
Miles Bergman's another one of yours at Port Adelaide, contracted for next year. Yep. There's been some murmurs, there always sort of are around Miles, particularly at this time of the year, but he's got that contract for next year. Is there any chance he leaves this season? No chance. He'll be at Port Adelaide. He's contracted next year, as you said. He's always one that has taken his time to make decisions and whatnot. He's a really intelligent, thought-out guy, really cares, but Port Adelaide have been awesome. Like, it'd be hard for him to even contemplate leaving what they've got building there. So we'll probably let it run its course this year and next year, and be in constant talks with Jason Cripps and the Port Adelaide list management team around how that looks. His teammate at Port Adelaide, Lockie Jones, we reported last week, close to a 2-year deal with the Power. Is that one about to go through? Yeah, that's been agreed to in recent days. So, great reward for the season that he's had. Every time he's been fit and available, he's been picked, and I think he's let Houston and Kane Farrell and those guys play with a bit of freedom, because he defends really strongly and kind of takes a really important forward. So, another 2 years for him is good. Daniel Rioli is a player at the Capital Sports Group stables at the moment. Obviously, contracted at the Tigers, had a really good year, another really good year, but he's got that interest from Gold Coast. What's the latest with him? Yeah, so I don't look after Daniel myself. Peter Lenton in our office looks after him. I think he's had an unbelievable season for Richmond in what's been a really difficult season for them. But in recent days he's requested a move to the Gold Coast Suns. So I'm not across all the details and the ins and outs of that, but I do know that has occurred. Sam Sturt, another one with Peter Lenton at Capital Sports Group at Fremantle, uncontracted, but had a really good end to the year and was really promising there. Is there any details around his future? Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're pretty close on a 2-year extension with Sam. So, I think he played some really strong footy and hit the scoreboard pretty well throughout the year. Obviously, Fremantle are going to have a bit to do during this trade period. But I think he's pretty close to locking in a 2-year deal. And Jake Kolodjasny, another one at Capital, out of contract at Geelong. We've spoken about him a couple of times throughout the year. Unrestricted free agent, but it's been such a key part of them for so long. What's the latest with him? So he had a bit of a concussion issue at the start during his pre-season. So Geelong have just taken their time. Marty Pask looks after him in our office, and I think they're pretty close to doing a 2-year deal as well for Jake. Nice, good reward for him. Peter Adams, another one of yours at Sydney, contracted for 2025, but he's played just the one AFL game this year. Obviously, they brought in Brodie Grundy last year. Has there been much interest in him? Because we always expect the ruck merry-go-round to kick into full swing at this time of the year. Do you expect him to be on it? Maybe. We don't know. Look, the move to Sydney at the time was a great move for him. He probably didn't have the impact in his first year or two there that he would have liked to, and then they go and target Brodie Grundy. He comes in and has a great year.
Pete's held up his end of the bargain in the VFL. He's been pretty dominant, kicking goals and winning hitouts, regularly getting kind of 18, 19, 20 touches a game. So he's one of those ones that we just got to stay flexible and speak to Sydney about what his future lies. And I wouldn't say he's definitely looking to get on the move, but he's one that could come up later on.
Spoke earlier in the show around Harry Petty and his situation at Melbourne.
Yep.
He was contracted already until 2025, signed a 2-year extension earlier this year that took him through to 2027. He obviously had some interest in going back to SA last year, which is where he's from. What was his thought process behind extending out his time at the D's?
Extending was just, last year there was a little bit going on. He was probably had some family stuff and whatnot that he felt the best place for him would be to be back in South Australia. He had a really honest chat with Goody, and Goody just reiterated how important he is to the team, and he's got a super relationship with Goody and Gordy and all those guys there. So, he's happy to play up forward, down back, wherever, and I think just locking him in gave him that extra security just to, buy in to the footy club and show he's loyal.
How has he enjoyed that forward role this year?
I think at times it's been really good. At times it's been a little bit frustrating. So, but I think it's probably on the back of he didn't have a lot of pre-season. So, he got thrown into a new position, without having real continuity through the pre-season training in that spot. So it took him a little while to adjust, but he played some really good games and he stood up in some key moments for them. But I think if they want him to play forward and whatnot, he's just going to have a really strong pre-season in that spot.
Caleb Graham at Gold Coast, obviously contracted until 2026, but we've spoken a few times throughout the year around how much interest there is in key defenders around the comp. Yeah. Is he attracting any interest from clubs? He's struggled to break into that side over the last couple of years.
Yep. He's played some really good footy at VFL level. Unfortunately, hurt his knee at the end of the season, so was on the crutches at the back part of the year. He's had an open and honest chat with Dimmer in recent days about where he's at. He's one that, we're just going to stay flexible on. He hasn't played AFL for a couple of years now, but has shown he's played, I think, 30-odd games at the level. Big body key defender, as you say, and there's not many of them out there. So he's one that I'm not going to say right now he won't be at the Suns. He's contracted, but we'll wait and see how it plays out.
His teammate at the Suns, and one of our favourites here on Gettable is Jed Walter, the big man. How's he settled this year? Because his first year in the AFL system, I reckon myself, Cal Toomey, and a lot of draft watchers were watching him for a number of years before he made it to the AFL, just thinking this guy could tear it apart. How's he enjoyed it up there, and how's he settled in?
Yeah, he's loved it. I think it was a bit of a baptism of fire at the start. Like he came straight in off no VFL games or whatnot, off a broken collarbone. I think he hadn't played since July the previous year. So get straight in and kind of learn on the job type setup. But look, he showed he was just about ready to explode and take the game by the scruff of the neck a few times, but then really struggled in some other parts as well. So he's just one that's going to benefit from another pre-season. He got significant games at AFL level under his belt, and I think he's probably where they thought he would be. He's got some improvement, he's got some growth, but he's really exciting at the same time. And
he's about to be joined by another academy gun at Gold Coast in Leo Lombard, who's also one of yours. Tell us a bit about Leo, because he's had a fantastic year. His national champs campaign was unbelievable. He played on the weekend for Gold Coast in their VFL finals campaign. He's already a VFL premiership player at 16 years of age. Tell us a bit about Leo.
No, he's a star. Like he's powerful, he's tough, he can kick goals. He's unbelievably competitive. It's probably too competitive sometimes, but another exciting prospect for the Gold Coast Suns to add in there. And I suspect he'll play pretty early on. He's ready to go. Really hard worker, explosive. He's already been in their academy and trained with their AFL, and as you said, played best part of 2 years of VFL now. So he's ready to go. And we expect he'll be, a really good selection for Gold Coast.
Are you starting to get an indication from clubs as to where a bid might be placed for him?
A little bit early, I think, a little bit early. Try and look at Cal Toomey's fan and form guide all the time, get some feedback on that from the boys. But a little bit early. I think he's, best case scenario, probably, like early first round. Probably, I can't see him, bid being outside 15, so he's probably in that 5 to 15 bracket.
Joe Berry, prolific small forward for the Murray Bushrangers and Vic Country this year. He's done some great things. Another one who's going to be in that sort of bracket and top 15 picks. Tell us about Joe and his season.
Yeah, he's kind of just popped. Like he's one of those guys that the start of the year, he put in a mountain of work. He's an ultimate professional, really great kid, great family. And he just started the season really well, and his form's just continued. He's a little bit sore at the moment, so he'd want to fire back up for a big final this week. But yeah, his best footy was in the championships, which is always a great sign. All Australian, really, like I said, really hard worker, really well skilled. So whichever club gets him is going to be really lucky.
And what about Tom Gross? He's one that's got a lot of plaudits this year for his toughness around the ball for both Oakley Chargers and Vic Metro. Another one who was an academy player as well. So tell us a bit about Tom.
Yeah, again, like ultra competitive, can play up forward, down back, or in the midfield. Hits the scoreboard, really good overhead. A Trinity Grammar boy, Maxi Kleiman, the great Maxi, looks after him in the office. So, it's a little bit hard to say where he sits right now, but all Australian, playing for Oakley in a big upset win on the weekend over Sandringham. So hopefully he continues his form and keeps going, and we're very, very optimistic he'll end up on an AFL list.
Adrian Cole, Harry Charlson, Luca Grego, and a couple more on the Capital stable. Tell us about those guys and where they fit into the mix.
Yeah, so Adrian Cole's an NGA to St Kilda, big-bodied defender. He's got speed, still pretty raw, but athletically ticks all the boxes. Had a really solid carnival for Vic Metro, and he's a key pillar for Sandy down back. We're really excited for him. Harry Charlson's the brother of Lockie Charlson, who got picked last year, completely different player, plays down back.
I love when that happens. It's completely different to their brothers.
Yeah. Plays down back, really, really great kid, hard worker, tough, just makes the right decision all the time. So we're pretty optimistic on him. And Luca Grego played Metro last year as a bottom major, played this year, had a really strong carnival, just puts up numbers every week for Western Jets. I think he's cousins or second cousins with Zach Butters, so we hope he might pops like Zach. But he's just a ripping kid, really hard worker as well. So optimistic about those bunch.
Well, John, we always appreciate you coming on Gettable. You're always great with your time. You've got about everything in the Gettable collection as well. You've got a T-shirt already. You've already signed your picture. There's a mug for you. You can take back to the Capital offices.
I appreciate that, mate.
Thank you for coming in. We always appreciate your time. Good luck for the trade period. Good luck for the draft, and thanks for coming in.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, as well, for watching. It's been another massive episode of Gettable. A big thanks to Google Pixel for their continued support throughout season 2024. See you next week.
Want to get all the latest footy news in one hit? From injuries to breaking news, the latest from the coaches, the Footy Feed team has you covered. Watch it now on afl.com.au and the AFL Live app, or wherever you get your podcasts.